Your Honor, I believe my daughter is in danger and I'm requesting full custody. The moment Caleb said that, I swear I forgot how to breathe. I've never hated silence as much as I did in that courtroom last Monday. I sat there in this stiff-ass chair, palm sweaty heart, punching my ribs, watching the man who used to kiss my neck in the kitchen now paint me as unstable in front of a judge. He didn't flinch, not once. Caleb wore this fitted Navy suit like he was about to pitch a real estate deal, not rip apart our family. Voice calm, shoulders relaxed. He said it like he was ordering coffee. No emotion, no hesitation. And the judge, Judge Morales, she didn't say a word at first. Just nodded like, okay, let's hear more. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking, is this real? Is this happening? Because the guy she's looking at, that's not the Caleb I knew. That's Caleb performed. The polished, clean-shaven, good dad act he puts on for the world. And damn if it isn't convincing. Behind me, Nora was sitting next to my mom, Ruth. She was clutching her school tablet in both hands. Her legs barely reached the floor. She was only 7. And she was watching the man she calls dad try to erase me. I wanted to speak. I really did, but nothing came out. My lawyer gave me this side glance like say something, but my throat betrayed me. I was frozen. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I had too much. So I sat there, paralyzed. While Caleb spun his story about me being emotionally erratic and unfit to co-parent, said I confuse Nora, said I make her scared. And the worst part, some of it sounded believable. Because I have cried in front of her. I have had bad days. But damn it, I've always shown up. Every day. You know what I don't do? I don't threaten her. I don't raise my voice till her eyes water. I don't call her names. I don't slam doors or break plates or walk out and disappear for 3 days without a text like he did last year. But none of that mattered in that moment. Not in that courtroom. Because he looked like a leader. And I looked like a mess. Which honestly, I kinda was. I'm Elena Brooks. 35. Part-time art teacher, part-time muralist, full-time mom. Been on my own with Nora for almost 2 years now. Caleb and I split officially last spring, but truthfully, we were done long before that. He moved out after the incident. I won't get into it yet, but let's just say it involved a slammed door, a broken lamp, and a terrified kid hiding in her closet. Since then, I've been juggling work therapy, childcare, court dates, and the deep, aching guilt that comes with wondering if you should have left sooner or fought harder. Anyway, the court thing started small. Just clarifying visitation. But then last month, Caleb flipped. Filed a motion for full custody. Claimed I was emotionally unstable and negatively influencing Nora. I almost laughed. But when the paperwork came in the mail and I read those claims, I legit sat on the floor in my hallway holding that envelope like it was burning through my skin. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook. Because the way he twisted my texts once, where I admitted I was overwhelmed or anxious, into proof that I was a threat, that was low, even for him. He always had this gift for flipping reality. Made you question your own memory. One time he told me I was overreacting to him disappearing for the weekend even though Nora had a fever and I'd called him 12 times. You're too emotional, he said. You always make drama. Right. So I did what I always do. I gathered evidence. I made folders, screenshots, emails. I recorded a couple voice memos after bad drop-offs. My lawyer said it was smart. Said it showed pattern. But still. In court, he was winning. Because the system loves the calm one. The one who performs stability. And I couldn't fake what I wasn't feeling. So yeah, I froze. Sitting there in that courtroom with a lump in my throat the size of Texas while my ex spun his narrative like he was auditioning for some goddamn custody drama. Then just as the judge turned to me and said, "Miss Brooks, do you have anything to add?" I couldn't get my mouth to work. But you know who did. Nora. 7-year-old gap-toothed sunflower dress-wearing Nora. She stood up. No warning, no cue from me. Just stood and said, "Your Honor, I brought a video from Daddy's phone. I think you should see it." And let me tell you, the air got sucked out of that courtroom like someone broke a window. You could have heard a pin drop. Caleb turned slowly like he couldn't compute what just happened. His lawyer shifted in her seat, clearly panicking. And Judge Morales, she leaned forward, brows raised. "Excuse me." Nora nodded. "He said those things when I was supposed to be asleep." But I wasn't. I heard him. I recorded it. I thought, maybe if you didn't believe Mommy, you'd believe him. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My daughter just did what I couldn't. She stood up. She handed her tablet to the bailiff like it was nothing. No tears, no shaking. Just this quiet, calm energy I'd never seen before. The judge took the tablet. Caleb's face pale, like ghost white. The judge pressed play, and there it was, Caleb's voice. Not the charming courtroom version, the real one, the one I knew, the one Nora lived through. Yelling, threatening, calling me names, telling Nora if she talked to the judge she'd regret it. Saying I was a psycho bitch who's turning you against me. I wanted to throw up. And the worst part, I didn't even know she had that video. I didn't know she'd recorded anything. I didn't know she'd been listening that closely. But she had. She had. And that's when everything changed. The judge didn't say a word for almost a full minute after the video stopped playing. Just stared at the screen like she needed her brain to catch up with what her ears had just heard. I was frozen in place, still trying to process the fact that my daughter, my 7-year-old, had just basically saved our entire case in one quiet, fearless move. Caleb looked like someone had punched him in the face and then paused time so he could just sit in the shame. His jaw was locked. His eyes were darting between the judge, the tablet, and Nora, like he was trying to figure out how the hell this happened. His lawyer leaned in and whispered something fast, probably some version of "we're screwed," but he didn't respond. He just kept sitting there like his entire persona had cracked right down the middle. Judge Morales finally looked up. "Where did this video come from?" she asked, direct but not unkind. Nora stood up straighter. "He left his phone on the couch. I heard him yelling and I wanted to record it. I was scared, but I thought if someone heard it, maybe they'd believe me. And Mommy." And that was it. That was the sentence that gutted me. She wasn't just defending me. She was trying to prove we weren't lying. She didn't think her own truth would be enough. That broke me in a whole different way. Judge Morales looked at the bailiff. "Can you please replay the final 30 seconds? Click. Caleb's voice again. "You think I won't fight back? You think the judge gives a damn about your mommy? She's crazy." They always side with the calm one. Pause. The courtroom was dead silent. Then she looked at Caleb. "Mr. Monroe," she said it like she already knew she was about to ruin his day. "Do you have any response to this?" He shifted in his seat, trying to pull it together. "That video is taken wildly out of context," he said, his voice cracking. "I was disciplining her. She was misbehaving and—" "No," Judge Morales said, holding up one hand. "Stop." His mouth snapped shut. "I've heard enough for today," she said. "And frankly, so has this courtroom." She turned to me. "Miss Brooks, I believe this is more than enough to justify a review of custody arrangements. Effective immediately, I'm granting you full temporary custody. Mr. Monroe will have supervised visitation only pending an investigation into emotional abuse and coercive behavior." I couldn't even process it. I just blinked. My attorney squeezed my arm, but even she looked stunned. Caleb stood up like he was going to object, but the bailiff was already moving toward him. "Sir, you need to leave the courtroom." "This is insane," he said. "This isn't over." "I'd be careful," the judge said without looking at him, "because you're already on very thin ice." And with that, he was escorted out. No dramatic scene, no yelling. Just him walking out, shoulders hunched, trying to hold on to whatever shred of control he thought he still had. When the door clicked shut behind him, the air changed. Like someone had opened a window and all the tension spilled out at once. Judge Morales looked at Nora and said softly, "You were very brave today. Thank you for telling the truth." Nora nodded, small and serious. She walked back to my mom, who was crying, by the way, and curled into her side like her armor had finally come off. I walked over and knelt in front of her. "You okay?" I whispered. "I was scared," she said. "But I didn't want to be scared anymore." That sentence is going to live in my bones for the rest of my life. We left the courtroom slowly. The bailiff gave us some papers about the temporary order. My lawyer said we'd need to do another hearing soon, but she was confident this was going to hold. "You've got the momentum now," she told me. "That video, that changes everything." I nodded, but honestly, I was just trying not to break down in the hallway. We got outside, and I just dropped to my knees in front of Nora and pulled her into the tightest hug I've ever given anyone. "You shouldn't have had to do that," I said. "I know," she replied. "But I wanted to. I wanted her to see." She meant the judge. But I think she also meant the world. Or maybe just me. That afternoon, we went straight to my mom's house. I didn't want to go back to the apartment yet, not with all that adrenaline still running through my veins. Mom made chicken soup, of course she did, and Nora colored at the kitchen table while I sat on the couch filling out more paperwork. At one point, she came over with a drawing. It was two stick figures holding hands under a giant heart. One had curly hair like mine. The other had a dress covered in sunflowers. Underneath it said, "Truth is brave." I lost it. Just sobbed quietly into my hands while she hugged my shoulder and didn't say a word. That night, we pulled out the old truth jar. We hadn't used it in weeks. Things had been too intense, too heavy. But Nora asked if we could do it, and I said of course. There were only 2 new notes inside. She pulled one out and handed it to me. I unfolded it slowly. It said, "What happens if the truth hurts people?" I looked at her. "Did you write this?" She nodded. "I didn't want to hurt Daddy," she said. "I just didn't want to be scared anymore." I swallowed the lump in my throat and took her hand. "Baby, the truth can hurt, but silence hurts more. You didn't hurt anyone. You protected yourself. And me. That's not wrong. That's brave." She looked down for a minute, then said, "I think we should keep doing this. Every night." And just like that, the jar had a purpose again. After she went to bed, I sat alone in the living room and stared out the window. Cars passed. A neighbor's dog barked. Life just kept moving. But inside me, something had changed. Not everything was fixed. But for the first time, in a long time, I didn't feel like I was constantly playing defense. I didn't feel like I was losing. Nora had reminded me what this was all really about. Not revenge. Not just winning custody. But protection, truth, voice. The kind that doesn't need to yell to be heard. And yeah, Caleb walked into that courtroom thinking he had the perfect performance. But Nora, she walked in with proof. And it was her voice, not mine, that finally cracked the mask he'd been wearing for years. Let me tell you, there is nothing more powerful than a quiet truth that lands harder than any scream. And my daughter, my little girl in a sunflower dress, knew that before I ever did. We're not done yet. There's another hearing coming. But we're walking into it very differently now. We're not scared. We're ready. 2 days after court, I finally slept through the night. First time in what, months, maybe longer. And it wasn't even good sleep. I woke up with my arm numb from hugging Nora too tight and my mouth dry from crying in my sleep. But still no nightmares. No 3 a.m. pacing. No anxiety spirals under the blanket pretending I was fine. It felt like my brain had been on high alert for years, and suddenly someone just hit the switch labeled "stand down." And Nora, she was lighter. She wasn't bouncing off the walls or anything. She's not that kind of kid, but you could tell. Her shoulders were less tight. She asked if we could paint her wall with stars and planets like she used to want before everything went sideways. I said hell yes. We made a trip to Michael's that afternoon, got those glow-in-the-dark paints and too many brushes. When we got back, she sat cross-legged on the tarp in her little tie-dye shirt painting Saturn with a tongue sticking out the side of her mouth in full concentration. I watched her and thought, this is what safe looks like. And then the next morning, Caleb texted me. Of course he did. "Caleb, we need to talk. You're blowing this way out of proportion." "Caleb, it's not good for Nora to see you so emotional." "Caleb, let's not turn this into a circus." I stared at the messages like they were written in another language. Dude really just called my daughter's act of courage a circus. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have things to say, oh, I had a novel, but because nothing I sent would matter. Guys like Caleb don't read to understand. They read to flip your words back at you. So I did what I've gotten really good at: screenshot save forward to my lawyer. She called 20 minutes later. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Try me." His attorney filed a request this morning to reconsider the visitation restriction. They're saying Nora's recording was unlawful. I actually laughed. He's claiming a 7-year-old violated his privacy. Apparently, they're trying to argue that the recording shouldn't be admissible in the long term. I could feel the anger climbing my spine. So instead of acknowledging what he said, he's going after her for how she proved it. Pretty much. Screw that. I hung up and walked straight into Nora's room. She was lying on the floor reading, and when she looked up, I could see it in her face. She already knew something was up. "I'm not in trouble, right?" she asked, small and serious. "Absolutely not," I said. But I do want to ask you something. That video, you recorded it on his phone, right? She nodded. Yeah, but then I emailed it to myself so he wouldn't see it was missing. And the audio file. Did you record that on your tablet? Some of it. I used the school app with the voice reader because I didn't want to forget what he said. So I typed it, and it read it back to me. Wait, you typed it like everything? Yeah, it saved it as a transcript. My jaw dropped. Baby, I said, can you show me? She nodded and pulled out her tablet, clicked into this folder called Important Stuff. Inside were 6 files, audio, video, and 2 long text docs titled Things Daddy Said and When I Was Scared. I swear I had to sit down. She'd made her own paper trail. Nora, my little first grader, had created a digital truth folder. I wanted to sob and hug her and scream into a pillow all at once, but instead I just said, This is incredible. You're incredible. She smiled, that shy, proud smile she does when she's unsure if she's allowed to feel good. I didn't want people to think you were lying, she whispered. He always says you twist things. I nodded, my voice thick. He says that because he's scared of how powerful the truth is, especially coming from you. We sent the new files to my lawyer. She called me the next day and said, okay, game over. That transcript, that's your smoking gun. We prepped for the final custody hearing all week. Nora knew she wouldn't have to talk again unless she wanted to. I wasn't going to make her relive any of it. I told her she already did more than enough. I want to come, she said, just to be there. So she did. The day of the hearing, she wore a blue hoodie with little white stars on it and those glitter sneakers she never stopped stomping in. She packed her tablet in her backpack just in case. My mom came too. She wore the same pin she wore at my high school graduation. Said it was her good luck for the next big win badge. I love that woman. We walked into the courthouse and Caleb was already there. New suit, same smug face. But this time, he looked a little off. Like he knew the tide had turned but was still pretending it hadn't. His lawyer barely looked at me. Fine by me. When we were called in, I felt this weird calm. I can't explain it. Like my body finally accepted that I wasn't fighting for permission to be a mother. I was standing in what I already knew was true. My lawyer laid everything out. She walked the judge through the video, then the transcript. She showed how the audio Nora captured matched the phone's call log. She pointed out the dates, the patterns, the behavioral shifts. She didn't use big words. She didn't dramatize anything. She just let the facts speak. And I watched as Caleb started to squirm. Because this time he couldn't pivot, couldn't perform, couldn't gaslight. The paper trail was airtight. At one point, he muttered something under his breath and the judge raised an eyebrow. Mr. Monroe, I suggest you don't speak unless asked. He didn't. Then Judge Morales looked at me. Miss Brooks, would you like to say anything before I make my ruling? I stood up slowly. My knees felt like paper. I just want to say thank you, I said. To the court. To my daughter. For trusting me when I couldn't find the words. For seeing past how I looked on the outside, scared, emotional, and understanding that those things don't mean I'm unfit. They mean I care deeply. That I've always cared. She nodded. And then, she delivered the ruling. Full physical and legal custody to me. Caleb would get supervised visits twice a month. No overnights. No unmonitored exchanges. And he'd be required to complete a 6-month parental accountability program before petitioning for anything more. The courtroom didn't erupt or anything. It wasn't a movie scene. But I looked over and saw Nora, her hands in her lap, eyes on me, and she smiled. It was the same smile from when she finished her galaxy wall. Quiet, content, safe. We left the courthouse without looking back. No parade, no applause, just freedom. And honestly, that was enough. A week after the final ruling, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text. A real paper envelope with my name written in handwriting I hadn't seen since Christmas cards back when things still felt normal. It was from Caleb's mom, Nora's grandmother. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at it for like 10 minutes, not sure if I wanted to open it or burn it. Ruth was cooking something behind me. Probably chili. She's always cooking chili when the weather drops, and Nora was on the floor with markers and paper everywhere. I opened the envelope. The letter was 1-page, handwritten, slightly shaky. Elena, I watched the video. I didn't want to believe it at first, but I did. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I don't blame you. I didn't speak up when I should have. I let Caleb lie to me too. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, and if Nora ever wants to talk to me again, I'll be here. On her terms. I read it twice. Then I slid it under the sugar jar and didn't say anything for the rest of the night. It wasn't anger, it wasn't sadness, it was more like grief's echo, like realizing how many people were complicit by just staying quiet. I told Nora about the letter the next day. She was coloring again this new obsession with drawing storyboards like comic books. I said, "Hey, I got a letter from Grandma Judy." She looked up. Is she mad? No, baby. She's sorry. She nodded slowly. I might want to write her back. Whenever you're ready. Later that night, she folded a piece of pink paper and wrote 4 words in crayon. Thank you for listening. No return address. Just those words. She told me not to read it. I didn't. I dropped it in the mailbox the next morning. After everything, the world didn't suddenly become sunshine and closure. The bills still came. Nora still had moments like the time a boy at school yelled too loud during lunch and she froze and I had to walk her out to the garden near the art wing just to get her breathing again. I still had panic attacks sometimes when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Healing wasn't some cute linear Pinterest quote. It was a mess, but it was ours. We leaned hard into small rituals. Friday pancakes. Story nights with flashlights under a blanket. The truth jar came back strong. We started writing not just confessions or questions, but things we were proud of. One of Nora's notes. I helped someone who was crying even though I was nervous. One of mine. I didn't cry after court today. I finally laughed again. We taped some of them to the fridge. Ruth started calling them our little wins. I liked that. The blog I'd abandoned during the whole mess, I reopened it. But I didn't try to turn it into some polished essay machine. I kept it raw. Told the real story. Piece by piece. What it felt like when Caleb slammed a door too hard. What it felt like when my daughter called me her hero with a peanut butter mustache. I wrote a post called Bravery Isn't Loud. It was short. Just a few paragraphs about Nora's day in court. The next morning it had 100 shares. Then 1,000. Then emails started coming in. Women, moms, teachers. Even one lawyer who said I wish more judges saw what yours did. Someone on TikTok read it out loud over a clip of courtroom drama and called it the most powerful real story I've heard this year. It blew up. I didn't expect that. And I definitely didn't expect the invitation that showed up in my inbox the next week. Subject line, speaking opportunity. Women who stayed conference. From some woman named Talia, who was organizing an event in Denver for survivors of emotional abuse, especially mothers in custody battles. She wanted me to speak. And not just me, Nora, too. I laughed when I first read it. Then I got really quiet. Because suddenly I realized, this thing that nearly destroyed us, it had also connected us to hundreds of others. People were listening. Nora said yes without hesitation. When is it? End of April. She nodded. I want to read the comic I made. The one with the mom who turns into a shield. I choked up. Okay, I said. We'll do it together. The event wasn't huge, just a rented ballroom, plastic name tags, boxed lunches. But it didn't need to be fancy. It was honest. The women there weren't trying to out-trauma each other. They were reclaiming space. And when Nora walked up to that little mic stand and said, "My name's Nora. And I'm not scared of my story anymore," I swear there wasn't a dry eye in the damn room. She read her comic. People clapped, not politely, loudly. One woman came up after and said, "Your daughter just said the thing I've been too afraid to tell my therapist for 3 years. Another gave me a hug and whispered, "Thank you for not deleting your blog." I read it every night when I feel like I'm failing. It was surreal. When we got home, I sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling for an hour. Not tired, not overwhelmed, just processing. Caleb hadn't reached out again. His supervised visits were still on the books, but he canceled most of them. The one time he showed up, Nora didn't say much. She gave him a drawing, though. A house made of glass. When I asked her what it meant, she said, "You can see everything in glass houses, no hiding." Damn, this kid, man. She keeps teaching me things I didn't know I needed. We started doing a thing we called the rewrite every Sunday. Sitting at the table, rewriting bad memories into new ones. Not lying, just reframing. The day Daddy yelled turned into the day I learned my voice mattered. The court day became the day the grown-ups finally listened. We'd draw them, label them, pin them to the wall like trophies of survival. And slowly the grief stopped taking up the whole room. We laughed more. She slept better. I looked in the mirror and didn't flinch. One night while brushing her teeth, Nora looked at me through the mirror and said, "You don't look tired anymore." I laughed. "Thanks, I don't feel tired." "You look strong." I turned to face her. "I am. So are you." We high-fived with toothpaste on our hands. Messy, human, free. Not perfect, but finally ours. 2 months after the Denver event, I got an email from a law student in North Carolina. Her name was Jay, and she'd read Nora's story through a legal advocacy blog that had picked it up from my post. "I know you probably get this a lot," she wrote, "but your daughter reminded me why I chose this path. I want to work with families like yours." I read that email 3 times, not because it was long or dramatic. It was actually super short, but something about it hit deep. Like this story, we never asked for this chaotic, gut-wrenching thing that tore our lives open. It was reaching people who were about to change the system. And yeah, I cried. Again. But it wasn't the heavy cry, not the exhausted "God, let this be over" cry. It was lighter. That maybe all of this mattered more than just survival kind of cry. That same night, Nora and I walked down to the corner diner. The one with the sticky booths and the world's worst lemonade. But they made pancakes in the shape of animals, and always let kids order from the grown-up menu if they asked politely. We slid into our usual booth by the window. The waitress Patrice gave Nora a fist bump and brought over crayons without asking. "Let me guess," she said. "Starfish pancakes." Nora nodded. "And for you?" she asked me. I shrugged. Something comforting. Surprised me. Patrice smiled like that was her favorite kind of order. Nora was doodling on a napkin. I was scrolling through my inbox and saw another message, this one from Caleb's supervised visitation counselor. "Hi, Elena. I wanted to inform you that Mr. Monroe has withdrawn from his visitation sessions and will not be pursuing future contact at this time. Per his signed agreement, all rights beyond current legal limitations will remain frozen unless initiated formally through family court." I read it, then reread it, then just sat there. He walked away. Not loudly, not dramatically, just stopped showing up. And it's wild because for so long I imagined I'd feel rage or relief or something huge when that happened. But what I actually felt? Nothing. No pit in my stomach. No ache in my chest. Just this stillness, like someone finally stopped banging on a door I wasn't answering anyway. "Everything okay?" Nora asked, chewing on her pancake antenna. I looked at her and smiled. "Yeah, baby, everything's finally really okay." And I meant it. By summer, things were different. Not movie montage different, just day by day, better different. Nora joined a comic book workshop for girls. Every Saturday, she came home with more drawings and way too many facts about obscure superheroes. I finished 2 murals back-to-back, one at a women's shelter and one at a community center near downtown. Both had huge walls and no budgets, but I didn't care. Painting again felt like breathing. One of the murals had a phoenix, but not the typical red and gold. Mine was painted in denim and charcoal, rising through black smoke with its wings made of newspaper clippings and broken crayons. The shelter director called it the rebirth of the overlooked. I cried when she said that. Then I added that line to the bottom corner in tiny white letters. Nora helped me stencil it. That same week, a producer from a podcast called Truthfully Speaking emailed us. She wanted to feature Nora's story in a 2-part series called When Kids Tell the Truth. I asked Nora if she wanted to. She shrugged. "Only if I get to edit it." Girl after my own heart. They sent us a mic. We recorded everything from our kitchen. They asked gentle questions. Nora answered them honestly. No scripts. No pressure. At one point, the host asked her, "What would you say to other kids who are scared to speak up?" Nora didn't hesitate. "Your voice doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be true." That line, it went viral. Teachers printed it on classroom walls. Advocates used it in training slides. One school in Maine made it part of their morning announcements for a whole week. People were listening. And I just kept thinking this started with a kid holding a tablet in a courtroom, hands shaking but voice steady. One brave moment, and now it was a movement. In August, we got a small grant from a women's foundation to host local rewrite nights. Simple stuff: folding chairs, open mic tea, and tissues. We held them in libraries and rec centers. Women came in with stories held in their chest for years. Some cried before they even got to the mic. Others laughed through pain, some whispered, some roared. But all of them rewrote something. One woman rewrote the day her husband left as the day I stopped apologizing for existing. Another rewrote her daughter's silence as a seed of truth learning to grow. And yeah, there were heavy ones. But there was joy too. So much joy. Joy in being heard. Joy in realizing you weren't the only one. Sometimes that's all it takes. Then one night, Nora walked into the living room while I was sketching mural ideas on the floor. She sat down across from me, cross-legged. "Can I ask you something kinda weird?" she said. "Always. Do you think Daddy ever wanted to be good, like, at first?" That question sat in the air like smoke. I thought about it. About the version of Caleb that smiled when she was born. The one who made pancakes in weird shapes and let her wear stickers on his forehead. The one who, for a minute, tried. "Yeah," I said. "I think he wanted to. But wanting to isn't enough if you're not willing to change." She nodded. "I used to think if I was better, he'd come back." My heart cracked, but I didn't interrupt. But now I think he just didn't know how to love without being in control. I reached across the sketch pad and took her hand. "You never had to earn his love," I said. "You were enough before you ever spoke a word." She didn't cry, she just looked relieved. Like letting go of something heavy she didn't realize she'd been carrying. We sat there in silence for a while, hands still touching markers scattered around us like evidence of healing. I wrote another blog post that night, called it Glass Houses and Galaxy Walls. It was about Nora's drawing, about seeing her turn fear into art, about raising a kid who doesn't just survive hard things but turns them into fuel. That post went farther than any of the others. A publishing house emailed me 3 weeks later. Said if I was interested, they'd love to talk about turning the blog into a book. I didn't say yes right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed to sit with the idea that my story was worth printing. Took me a long time to believe that. But eventually I said yes. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Silence doesn't keep you safe. It just keeps you stuck. And stories, especially the messy, imperfect, vulnerable ones, are what help other people unstick. We didn't ask for this story, but we survived it. And now, we're rewriting the ending on our own damn terms.